Oh, you're going to see the rabbits.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I hope that everyone can hear me clearly. If you can hear me, you can just give a thumbs up in the on the reaction button or in the comment section. We're going to be starting shortly. We're just going to let other people come into the conversation before we fully start and introduce our amazing panel of guests. All right, cool. I think we'll just start because we don't have much time because some of our guests have other commitments. But today on this conversation, and again, welcome to everyone. This is, my name is Nape Sinong, and I'm the mobilizer strategist at Youth Capital. For those that are new to Youth Capital's work, we are basically an advocacy campaign that is incubated in the DG Matric Trust in DGMT, and we advocate for policy change around policies that affect young people in terms of not being able to get work. So we advocate for policies that will help us basically get out of this unemployment crisis that we find ourselves in, particularly policies that affect young people's abilities to find work and to earn money. So today we're going to have the first of what we hope would be many conversations around NSFAS, education, the NDP, and how all of those moving factors affect young people's ability to find work. So our guests, as you've seen from the poster, some of them don't need much more introduction, but today in the room we have Dr. Pali Lehohla. Dr. Pali is the former statistician general of South Africa, and he's also just a really great individual who has been speaking quite a lot and sharing quite a lot in terms of what he thinks should be done in terms of solving some of the challenges that we face in the country, unemployment being one of those, and some of the challenges in education. So welcome, Doctor. And then also we have Professor Mary Metcalf. Prof Mary Metcalf is an education expert. She's worked in government, has led in various parts of society, and she also is someone who is very, very outspoken around education challenges, and also how do we get young people to have the right skills and the ability to earn money and find work in the future. The other person that we have is Matshidiso Lencoasa. Matshidiso is the current chairperson of the Budget Justice Coalition. She also works as a policy budget analyst at Section 27. Matshidiso is also a Fees Must Fall activist. She's part of that generation that I also come from. Welcome, Tidi. And we're also looking to get your perspectives as both a Fees Must Fall activist and also as someone who is working in the budget space. So just to get into it, and I think this question goes out to everyone. Last week, whenever we received the Matric results, there's a lot of debate and a lot of conversation and discourse around the country, particularly around education, more than other times. So last week, the Matric results of the class of 2024 came out, and they did quite well. They achieved the historic 87.3% pass rate, improving from the 82.9% pass rate of 2023. This question, I think we'll start with you, Matshidiso. What are your comments on this? Do you think that we're doing better? And if yes, what are we doing that is shaping this improvement?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope that you can hear me. So I'll just keep talking. Okay, you can hear me. Great. So yeah, as you mentioned, the matric results, that increase to 87% is just so inspiring. You can really just tell the young people in this country are really inspiring, and it just begs the question is that, first of all, it just shows that when we know, like the work that we do at Section 27, that so many of these learners have actually risked their lives to achieve quality basic education and to achieve these results. You have learners who risk their lives using dangerous pit latrines in rural communities. Those are still a reality. Learners who are learning in infrastructure or schools that are built of inappropriate materials. And they are doing all of this in a context where the government has been reducing funding towards education, towards healthcare, towards all these different parts. And yet, the programs are really constrained, and yet the learners are rising to the occasion and exceeding expectations. And so really, for me, like my thoughts on that is that we should then be inspired to really shape the future for these learners so that they can participate in an economy that's not hostile to young people, but really that can advance and help them really secure their futures so they can contribute meaningfully to this country and shaping this country. So I just think, yes, we still have a long way to go when it comes to education access and education success in our country. But the victories that we have achieved so far, we should really just be taking them, using them as inspiration to just scale them so that nobody will be left behind in this future South Africa that we're trying to create. So yeah, I'll just stop there. I'm keen to hear what others think about this.
Thank you for that, Tsidi. Dr. Pali, same question to you. What do you think it is that we're doing better or we did better?
Well, now, I don't know whether you want me to share my screen. Not so much about
the
results, but to give perspective. And I don't know how many minutes you will give me, but I'll go through my screen very quickly. In doing that, let me preface my thinking that the 30 years on, we haven't moved the needle. 1 percentage point here, 2 percentage points there. Yes, those who have done well deserve to be congratulated, but generally, we are just marking time, if not regressing. So let me share my screen. Have I been given some power?
They will give you sharing powers, yes, in the background.
Okay. Yes, so I can share now. Yes, it looks like I have power. I have a few graphs. I hope they will move. I mean, the last time I tried to do this, and so I just want to show.
They're moving.
They are moving. Let's see. Are they giving us the big screen or what is it?
They are on the big screen, yes.
They are on the presentation mode. Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is a Department of Education data. So we cannot say we don't have the data. Somewhere here, there are 1.3 million children born, 6 years ahead of when these children came into grade 1, 1.2 million of them. And now in 2023, 740,000 wrote Matric. That's what happens. So of the 1.3 million that were born, we lost, if 740, we actually lost almost 600,000. Some will have died, but not many died that much. But out of that 740,000 in 2023, only 300,000 of them will get a good pass. So you lose another 400 or you lose 440 from those, 440,000. And there are only a few places at university, no more than 160,000. So the system is fighting itself, and it just shows the paucity, pathetic planning. Now, if you look at this, you will see that these are corroborated, although this was just 3 schools that we looked at. But we ran a census at schools, and the results are not very different from this. Around favorite subjects, primary, you see that children actually want to do mathematics as the most favorite subject. But when they go to secondary, which is this pink, mathematics drops by half. And this is encouraged by the president, the Minister of Education, the MECs in the province, the teachers, the parents, and the children. Even in private schools, people are discouraged to do mathematics so that the reputation of the school can be higher. So when you see these improved results, when you look at the daily side of that, you know that less 12,000 children wrote mathematics this year compared to last year, because we have encouraged this mediocrity. So you see here, 33% children, primary, they don't fear mathematics. They fear it once they go to secondary. This kind of shift in preferences, it's a policy inspired. It cannot be a random issue. It's completely policy inspired. And then look at this, grade 12 children experiencing hunger, and they are going to write. So there are these other issues that are in the background that make even this grade 12, and you can see family choices here being made for younger children to eat and the elder ones to be sacrificed. 60% of our food is destroyed because of no storage, because of no cooling, because of so many other things. And South Africans go hungry, particularly these ones in grade 12, which means that they go there and write hungry. Now, I just want to go through this very quickly. 2023, this is people who start grade 1. I showed you when they were born, and that's what they start. This is those who actually go and write in secondary. And then these ones are the ones that are wasted. This is wasting, and this is amongst Black Africans as of 2023. Our focus must be in these tertiary education blocks, this pink and blue. Now you have to just compare those. This is for colors. Now go to the Indians. You see how this purple and blue go for Indians, particularly for those who are age 20. You see where they are. These people are 61% of this cohort at age 20. And then this is white. Now, I'm giving you this graphic here just to compare blacks, coloreds, Indians, and white in this area of purple and pink, which is tertiary education. So when you have that kind of situation, that in 2023, only 7% or so of blacks are in tertiary compared to 61% of whites, of Indians, and 59% of whites. It's deplorable. There's absolutely no progress here. Even if these children who are black here would have passed Matric, they wouldn't even find a space at the university. So this is not progress. Spall, at some point, gave an impression that many blacks are graduating. Of course, there are 48,000 compared to 5,000 in the 70s. 48 is 10 times that number. But when you use ratios, the performance of blacks is this one here. For every one black that graduates, by 2014, 4.5 whites were. And by now, things have even become worse. So when we think about these issues, we really have to think about that kind of future. I'll talk about employment later, but I'm not impressed by the pass rate. I'm saying, yes, let's congratulate those who have passed, but stop there. And then say, what are we going to do with the rest? Because there's absolutely no intergenerational value for blacks. Until we understand, and that sinks in our heads, that blacks are doomed and colors are doomed. And overall, the country is doomed. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing. I'll come and share later when we have a second question.
All right, those were quite grim, but also profound, numbers in terms of us understanding that there's still systemic challenges that are at play here, and we really need to consider that whenever we look at these results as they come every year. Mary, you are also someone who says quite a lot, who highlights quite a lot of stuff that we usually don't take into account when we look at the matric results. What is sort of your impression?
I want to start with where Matshidiso started, is that we will be all offering a critique of the system tonight, but that doesn't detract from the celebration of those who overcame enormous odds in order to succeed. We do need to celebrate with them. What concerns me, and I've watched Pali in some of his presentations on the news where he gives a critique of some of the economic decisions that contribute to that. What concerns me now is that those young people who have worked so hard and have expectations and hope, and who are driven by the family's dream of a better life. So many families sacrifice for a better life for their children, support them through school, are now steadying themselves to support the children through the post-school education and training system, which is dominated by a perception that university is going to give me the best chance of a better life. And when we look at unemployment rates, it is true, and Pali would have the figures, that people with degrees are, or the population with degrees are more employed than people with college degrees, with NSC, and then down to people who didn't get the National Senior Certificate. But we even have graduates and TVET students, which we can come back to, who are unemployed. So this linear expectation of a degree and all of the sacrifices that families make means that it's a bit of a gamble. And I worry about young people carrying that burden of responsibility when the family and the extended family has sacrificed for you to go to residence, to travel, to have pocket money, to study. And then things are tough. There's challenges within the studying, and then the worst thing is the unemployment afterwards. I often, I'm an educator and I don't have time to do everything that interests me in the world, but I almost often feel that it would be interesting to do a study of how young people who have gone through all of that effort manage that disappointment and the impacts on them. The second thing that I do agree with Pali, and it's obvious, and I can talk forever on this, is the persistence of inequality, both in the way in which learners experience education, in the way they perform, and in these outcomes. And I do believe that we don't do enough to address those inequalities. 30 years is in many ways a long time, but it's also a short time. And I don't think that we yet understand the fiscal federalism of our constitution and the increasing ways in which provinces must be the ones that implement whatever ambitions the DBE has, and they must implement it from their own portion of a provincial equitable share. And I don't think our mechanisms for looking at creating greater equality in the educational input are working. I think I better stop there. I'm quite determined to listen more to my other panelists and to questions so that I learn in this one seminar.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mary. Dr. Pali, I'm going to bring in the unemployment, link now, trying to link unemployment and the educational outcomes. So you are a numbers person, and hence I'm posing this question to you. So we know that in 2008, about 4.8 million young people between the ages of 25 and 34 were employed, and then also 1.6 million young people between the ages of 15 and 24 were employed. Fast forward to the third quarter of last year of 2024, 4.7 million young people aged 25 to 34 were unemployed, while 1 million people aged 15 to 24 were unemployed. Following the stats, what do you think that the relationship between educational outcomes and unemployment rates is in South Africa?
I think you misread the last two. And I'll help you with the graph.
You are the numbers person.
Yes, yeah, yes. Let me just get back to sharing my screen. I'll just go to the employment numbers. But I wholly agree with my colleagues, Mary there. And so if you look at, where is this graph now? You are correct in this graph that I can't hover with this now, sorry. You are correct. There were 4.8 million young people employed between 25 to 34 years. This is the outer black line here. And 1.6 million those who were 15 to 24. Fast forward in 2024, last third quarter, that number had dropped by 100,000 to 4.7 million. And this one had dropped by 600,000 to 1 million. So what happened is that you can see numbers that were unemployed, which is this block here in 2008, and unemployed persons then, which is this block here. Now, fast forward, this is the number that has been unemployed, and that's the number that has been unemployed. The unemployment amongst the educated is not that high, it's about 9%. With the educated, it's about 9%, which is not so high. But when you have gone to school and the expectations are there, as Mary says, and you don't get a job, and increasingly so, it gets worse. And we have to try and understand what is happening there. It gets worse between those who have gone to TVET and those who have gone to do a degree. The rate at which unemployment shifts when we've got a degree, at least you have been to university, for those who qualified before 1995 and those who qualified in post-1995, those numbers look more or less the same. The trend is the same. The difference in both time periods is not. But when we have gone to TVET, you experience more unemployment than you did, than those who qualified pre-94. So there's something that employers make a choice around, that they don't believe that the TVET education or whatever it is of quality. So they reject all the people that we trained post-1994 in those TVET colleges in terms of the gradient of change and levels of unemployment of those. So there's something fundamental there that is really needs looking at. Then there's some of the policies of closing down ESCOM training and all these things of core mandate, where ESCOM used to train people and ISCO used to train people. Now we said we want core mandate. And core mandate is produce electricity, don't train. Whereas institutions of that nature were actually de-risking the state in terms of the quality of training that they would have provided, and these people could go anywhere in the private sector. Now we have replaced these things by CETAs and all these other things, where myself, I can now say I want to open an engineering out school and start training people in those kinds of skills. So it's a very terrible thing. So what you see in terms of this unemployment is racialized, so badly racialized that you'll see that blacks have no intergenerational value. I mean, if you look at this graph, this is where the blacks are stuck, and I think you should just keep your eye here compared to those of whites. And so the post-apartheid system has left blacks trapped here. They haven't moved, you can see that, against those 21 percentage points, 19 percentage points. For blacks, absolutely no movement. In fact, those who are 25 to 34, while they had 17% then in 1994, that share has reduced to 14% of the people who are skilled within their own population race. So I think we have to understand the implication of this in terms of intergenerational value. There is no intergenerational value for blacks. And when that happens, then the education is useless, or at least the outputs of education are useless.
Mm.
Thanks.
Mm. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for those numbers again, Doc. So while Mary, this one is for you. I'm just still like in awe in terms of the numbers. That's not in a good way that Doc is presenting. But Mary, we have the NDP, right, which was conceptualized as a way, as a policy framework, basically, to get us to a much better space than we are at the moment. And the NDP has set very, ambitious and incredible targets for education, whether it's around literacy, reading stuff, or around mathematics. Looking at where we are today, are we on the right track in terms of achieving our 2030 NDP goals?
Thank you, Nope. I just want to make one quick point in addition to what Padi has said, is that, it's not only intergenerational wealth, it's also intergenerational social capital in terms of networking and access. So I won't give you some examples, but I've been struck recently by STEM graduates with wonderful degrees in specialized areas whose families have contacted me to say, what do they do now? And it's because maybe age, but also the social capital of networks that I've been able to direct them. When you are the only graduate in your family, in the community, how do you begin to find those connections? So forgive me for adding that. The NDP targets are not being met. Now, the reason one of the things we have to look at is firstly, the extent to which the departments responsible for achieving those targets have actually developed credible plans to achieve them, set realistic annual targets against which they honestly report to the public to see the extent to which they are achieving those goals and the extent to which their plans are aligned to the fiscal program. So are we achieving enough passes in maths and science in the National Senior Certificate? As Padi has shown, we are not. We way off the targets of 30,000 in maths, 20,000 in science. And there's a distortion that is coming from within education itself. Padi has shown that what departments like to see, provincial departments, is better pass marks, more distinctions. So there's a possibility, and I think there's evidence for that from school level, people are steering learners away from attempting maths to shifting to maths literacy, which has very valuable role in society. I'm not denigrating that. But instead of aiming for more maths passes and good quality maths passes at school and provincial level, there may be a manipulation to ensure that the school's pass rate and the provincial competition, which I hate, by the way, because provinces aren't equal, distorts people's choices. In terms of post-school education and training, I'm going to say something controversial, and I'm going to really listen carefully after I've said it. Because the public perceives correctly, as Padi has given us the figures, that there is a higher possibility of employment if you have a degree. It means that the Department of Higher Education and Training is growing enrollment in universities and is way off its targets in TVET and in the community colleges. TVET, we have not, in my view, yet addressed the quality environment, the quality teaching and learning that would make TVET an attractive alternative, attractive qualifications, attractive to the market. And as Padi's pointed out, the enrollment rate from TVET is very low. However, that is the sector of the post-school education and training environment where we need valuable skills. I'm not sure how many people listening are homeowners. To find a plumber, to be able to have, yeah, Padi's laughing, because we do not yet value those occupations, recognize their value, nor do we see TVET as a viable alternative to provide us with those skills. That has to be addressed. Community colleges should be, I think the DHET plan is to virtually have one in every municipality. This should be linking young people of ability, which is our young people, to the kinds of skills that will help them even in their survivalist enterprises. That's where the mass of young people are. They're eking out living, trying to do things. What are the skills that would help them to do it more successfully? Then you have the question of technical education, and then you have degrees. Now, there's a whole distortion of this landscape because lack of attention to building quality in the other forms of post-school and not really aligning to the resources. The reason community colleges are not expanding is because they're low in the pecking order and no investment is being made. So this whole post-school education and training landscape needs to be thoroughly rethought, invigorated, focused on quality, and must give real opportunities.
Thank you for that, Mary. CD, I also just want to ask you a question around, the post-school journey, because we talk about matric results a lot, but then young people's, journeys must continue after matric. And then we saw, and Mary already touched on this a bit, and even Doc touched on it a bit. We saw that this year, universities were overwhelmed. Last year, applications that came in last year for this year, universities were overwhelmed. And if I have the numbers here, UJ received about almost 700,000 applications. And I think they only have 10,000. They have about 10,900, 11,000, basically, around 11,000 spaces available. And we still need skills we still need young people to, get skills. How do you think we resolve this, get around this issue of, getting young people to find, opportunities to learn after matric?
Yeah, I think you raise a really pertinent point, because it is true, and I'm now reflecting as a person who was involved during Fees Must Fall as one of the students. One of the areas, or how I got involved, was by considering how do we fund higher education. So as students, we came together to think about alternative ways to fund this crisis. And, looking back, now reflecting on that 10 years later, I think I would just maybe say that when we look at higher education and just education access in this country, we can't look at just one aspect of it. So for us, as activists at the time, an important issue was access, because there were barriers to access through the form of financial barriers, right? And now we're seeing that in some ways there are overcoming of those financial barriers. Well, there are attempts at it, but we can talk a little bit more about are those attempts actually fruitful? But it just seems like there will then be additional barriers to it. So when I was still applying for university back in the day, just getting those points to get into university, it was pretty much like guaranteed. If you had distinctions for all these subjects, you're probably going to get into accounting or whatever it is. But today what we see is that a lot of students actually apply. So those points are now the minimum because there's been such a high demand. And I think Prof Mary also reflected on how it's not really, let me just find my words. Sorry, I just lost my point there, but I'm just like thinking about some of the issues that are facing young people in accessing higher education. And so I guess I try to be an optimist because I think it's just so important for young people to not lose hope, because you never know what can change in 10 years and what can change in 20 years, and just want us to be in the best position and to really fight for our futures. Even if things are looking gloomy right now, we have an economy that is very hostile to young people. But I really just think that we should be looking at the tools that we currently have and considering, are we maximizing on our fiscal policy? Are we maximizing on our industrial policy, economic policy at large to actually overcome barriers to accessing human rights and, accessing ways to improve economic participation through enabling people, empowering people to participate and access higher education? And I just remembered the point is that higher education from university has become, the demand has shot up, but then there's an overlooking of other skills that are crucial for keeping our economy alive today. And so TVET colleges are not seeing the same kind of demand that I think was envisioned or that we would like to see. And so we've enabled access on one end, but then, and it's understandable though, because also that was also mentioned that it's the rate of unemployment among people who have a university degree is so much lower than for people who don't have that degree. So the demand in this economic context just makes so much, it's not surprising. But it does show that we really need to be thinking about a sustainable way to advance the realization of to allow or to empower young people to shape their future. And this current context of, yes, now we have allocated 3.8 billion towards advancing the missing middle, but we still have so many other barriers within our system that it's so hard to remain optimistic, even though I do try. And so I really do just implore us as a society to be thinking about the tools that we have at our disposal to be advancing, overcoming these barriers to access education. So what do we do? What role is our budget? Not just the allocations, not just the amount, are we increasing or decreasing, but how are we investing in programs so that we can overcome those barriers, but also how are we investing in job creation programs, in the presidential climate, in programs that enable young people to not just get qualifications, but to also participate meaningfully in the economy. I think if we don't think about that, if we don't actually honestly think about these things and honestly grapple with the facts like Dr. Pali has illustrated, then we won't, we'll be taking one step forward, two steps back. We'll be back here 30 years later again and only making incremental changes and not really not really creating a lasting impact and creating a society that really works for all. So I'll just stop there. I was trying to get my thoughts together, but I hope I got it there eventually. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that, CD. We have a comment in the comment section in the chat from Bridget Kanya, and I think it actually responds to this question. And Bridget says that additionally, the focus on technical, vocational skills allowed for community education training colleges and to contribute not just TVETs. She would add also not just focused on quality teaching and learning, but also focused on where there is the opportunity for absorption into the world of work, and then also providing relevant and up-to-date information to learners exiting basic education to align to their subject choices with the next step that ultimately bring them to the labor market. So it's really, in as much as we would like to focus on improving quality in the TVET and some of our community colleges, Bridget touches on us looking up on, like, what are the lowest hanging fruits for us to get the students to be absorbed, and also just providing relevant information that is in line. So the next question that I'm going to ask before I open up to the floor is a question basically for everyone, and it revolves around NSFAS. We are currently running a campaign, an advocacy campaign that is focused on getting NSFAS to get its house in order. That's what I've been saying to most people when they ask what we're doing, because at the moment, NSFAS is sitting with a lot of historic appeals. NSFAS does not have a governance structure. There isn't a board there. There is no CEO. When they have to go to parliament, the administrator comes in, and the last time they went there, they presented an annual report from the previous year, not from the year that they were going in for. So there's quite a number of challenges there. There needs to be urgent intervention. So we do understand that absorption is one thing. So bringing me back to the question that I want to ask, we understand absorption is one thing, and is what we were speaking about now. But the other thing is around this NSFAS question. And TD, I want to bring you in as someone who is young. During Fees Must Fall, you'd remember that we had a lot of, ups and downs, back and forth with NSFAS. And it looks like 10 years later, some of the challenges that were there in the system are still affecting the students that are there in the system. So as a young person, as a former Fees Must Fall person, I want to ask, as a former Fees Must Fall activist, I want to ask you, what do you think the role of NSFAS is in terms of supporting students to be able to finish in record time, to be able to feel supported while they're in these higher education institutions? What do you think that the role of NSFAS is really in terms of, having us fully supporting students?
Yeah, also another important consideration, because even back during Fees Must Fall times, the way that, like how we fund higher education and provide opportunities for learners, indigent learners and learners from marginalized backgrounds was highly contested. So, of course, students were calling for a more grants-based system rather than the loan system. But then, of course, as you expand and you see the way that the world works, that actually we need enough resources for the next year and the next year and the next year. But that was the conversation back then. And now what we're looking at, I think there has been largely, there's still the loan system or expanding, we're trying to expanding into the missing middle, but also some form of like debt forgiveness that has happened because of unemployment, persistent unemployment, youth unemployment in the country. And so, I really just think that when it comes to NSFAS, it's still the same. Like the challenges seem to have changed. So now it will be maybe administrative or bureaucratic problems or governance issues, same as back then, but the way that they manifest will look different, but it's still the same thing, that what is supposed to be enabling young people, empowering them to participate in higher education, to really shape their futures, is now an additional barrier. And so I don't think anyone really can, the state that you're saying that they don't even have a board, and every time they do present to the higher education committee in parliament, it's always just, we're always just left so disheartened as a country. And I think now it's been 10 years since Fees Must Fall, but also to just say that, especially in universities like TUT, Northwest University, they'd been protesting about this long before. And I think now that the conversation, we're back talking about higher education, we really need to come back to something and say, you know what, this NSFAS model, is there a better way to do this? Should we be rethinking how we fund higher education in this country, especially now at a moment where the economy is not doing so well? Are we getting the return, or are we really empowering our learners the way that we had anticipated? So yes, we definitely need interventions we definitely need interventions to support impoverished learners because of the inequality that we face in our country, the poverty levels that are rising, and an opportunity to get people back into the economy to really shape their own futures. But at the same time, we need to be thinking, is this really the best way to be doing it? Can we be more innovative? Can we go back to the drawing board and find ways to really advance higher education attainments? But one would also have to ask, are the issues that are being faced by NSFAS individualized or localized to that department and that program and intervention, or are they just a reflection of greater issues when it comes to fiscal, spending money across departments, across not just, Department of Higher Education, but just across government in this country at large? So yeah, those are my thoughts, and I will maybe stop there because would love to hear from the other panelists.
Still on Fees Must Fall, Mary, you worked a bit, with supporting students during that time, being in solidarity with students and working with different groups and working with students. And it's 10 years after Fees Must Fall now. What do you think was the impact of Fees Must Fall in changing our perceptions about higher education? And do you think that we've regressed? Do we still have the same perceptions? Do we still have the same agency? What do you think around that?
Well, first of all, the leadership displayed by students in Fees Must Fall was inspiring. And I think that it was a significant political mobilization, participation phenomenon post-1994 that will resonate for a long time. But I noticed your points and absolutely agree with you that the implementation of the student funding that followed Fees Must Fall has been really problematic. The administrative problems, the bureaucratic problems, the governance problems that Matshidiso has spoken about are real. And I think that because we have, in my understanding, a more active, coherent group of activists in the university sector, I don't think we're paying enough attention to the crisis of NSFAS administration in the TVET sector. And I think that is where there may be a huge amount of leakage. But earlier I said I was going to be controversial and then listen. And this is the controversial point I want to make more clearly now, is I'm using figures from Michael Sacks's paper on fiscal austerity. I'll put a link in the chat if anyone wants it. And it looks at funding across NSFAS, the TVET sector, the ECD sector, university core funding and schools between 27 and 2025. And what's clear from this, I could put it on screen. I'm not sure if I have.
I see what's going to be sharing right now. You can share.
Yeah, I've got right. Okay, so just give me a second to get it clearly in focus. But this is the slide from Michael Sacks. Okay, just close other things. Yeah. This is it. So if anyone wants it, I'll put it in the chat. So if you look at NSFAS funding, the good work of those activists meant that NS funding went soaring high, which was a political response to a political pressure in a particular sector of our population. Okay, now let's look at university core funding. Between 2017 and now, it's gone down. Why? Because there's a limited budget envelope. Now, what we have is more students and less money in terms of maintenance, in terms of buildings, in terms of class size, in terms of tutors. And anybody who's in the room could probably give me stories of where they've seen a decline in quality because there's not enough core funding. Now, that's what's controversial. What I'm saying is, yes, we need more students in universities. We need more, but we also need quality. And why it's controversial, and I'm already getting my tail between my legs, because it's the question, and I've got people like Matshidiso and Buddy who better understand economic policy, is the question of austerity. Do we have to operate within the fiscal envelope? Is it that we can spend our way out of austerity, but the distortions in and the consequence of a limited budget on core spending in universities, I think, are serious. If you look at the funding for schools, and I'm a bit mechanical here because I like to believe that basic education is the fundamental constitutional right, and I can argue for that. Funding for basic education declining, and then if you look at TVET core funding, it's increased, but it's nowhere near where it should be. So where's the balance? How do we begin to create a system which genuinely embraces the needs of the majority as well as the needs of the economy, etc.? So I'm not certain that we're doing the right thing with these distortions of spending. And with that, I'll go off share screen. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for that, Mary. It will be, please don't forget to share in the comment section so that people can have access to that document. This is quite a lot to process. I'm taking it all in as I'm facilitating. But I just want to go through some of the questions that are in the chat, and then I'm just going to pose this to everyone, and then I don't know who will take it first. Someone is asking if it would be a radical proposal that NSFAS only funds studies that are proven to bring students closer to the world of work. Yes, Mary.
So I'm just sorry, and I'm gonna not talk too much, but I have a passionate reaction to an instrumentalist view of education, that it is only skills that directly relate to employment. The growth in ability to be socially conscious, to be responsive to challenges in society, that form of education is important as engineering, etc. Sorry, that's me.
Okay, cool. So I want us to, as we wrap up, to cycle back to the NDP, right? So we need to achieve our 2030 goals because those are identified areas where we need improvement as a country. How do we basically get on track, in reality, to achieving some of these goals? And how do we fill the gaps that are there between the vision and current implementation?
Thank you very much.
And I think, Doc, you can come in. I don't know if you got that.
Yes, my granddaughter is delivering some sour milk to me.
Oh,
so
I thought it was coffee.
My mouth and a beard turning gray, you'll know.
So
no. You see, Mary and Sisi are really inching to where the problem is. Without a sound plan, and I don't think we have any plan for the country. And that's why we are in this kind of mess. And then we start giving some euphemism and saying the missing middle and all these other terms that are absolutely useless. To try, when we do not understand what at the heart of problems are in South Africa. We haven't actually looked at the family. and how the constitution of the family is. No one has paid attention to the fact that 60% of fathers say they are married against 30% of mothers. That's a fundamental flaw in a society. It's broken. And if we don't bring that into the equation when we think about funding, we have this disconnect. We haven't actually looked at the question of national building. The only space in South Africa where you can build a nation is in the feast must fall. And the students presented us with an opportunity to build a nation. Then the EFF, the ANC, all these political parties started polarizing the student body and trying to exploit them and make them political parties. So the nation building issues was lost. I mean, we are so polarized. It is only at those tertiary institutions where students can meet in critical masses from all races and answer the question, what country are we aspiring? But that movement has been destroyed. You see, 1.4 million people in tertiary education in this country is a drop in the ocean. And 750,000 that are sponsored by NSFAS, it's not going to take us anywhere. The backlog is such that we need 4 million people in tertiary education in this country, year in, year out, in order to break the back of this. Blacks and coloreds are not going to be 61% of professions, of professional employees in this country. Not in 100 years, not in 1,000 years, for as long as we are working in this way. Whites and Indians have reached that level. And you now see Korea, South Korea in South Africa, and the rest. And without understanding these numbers and patting ourselves in the back and saying that we have 750,000 and we are the only country in Africa that sponsors those, absolutely inconsequential in terms of the challenge and in terms of the resources that we have and in terms of what are our targets and where do we want to be. So without understanding the targets and the path to getting there, we'll always congratulate ourselves with a 1% percentage growth in the Matric pass rate and so on. The point is we are adding 900,000 people who should necessarily achieve tertiary education every year who don't. And we only have 200,000 that do. With a third, you are doomed to fail. This is the challenge. And nowhere in our government papers or anywhere are we actually seeing this tragedy. And we see its manifestation. And we haven't even looked at it from a family perspective when we start talking about the missing middle. And we are saying, okay, if the child and the mother and the father earn so much, that father and mother had long disappeared from the child, from the life of the child. The child is left with the mother. The father is not there. And then we punish the mother and the father. And when the mother tries to go to the father, you'll never break the back of gender-based violence. So our policymakers are absolutely ignorant about these challenges, or at least they turn their eyes away from them because they are at the heart of our system. Nation building is a big thing. And because we have moved away from fees must fall, where students across races said fees must fall. They didn't say for whites or that. They said fees must fall. I would argue that pay for everyone because we need to build a nation. If we don't, the Afrikaners have built their own university now. They are building another one and another one. The nation building agenda, which is the most important thing, is lost.
Oh, thank you for that, Doc. So we've run out of time basically, and because these were all such great contributions that were coming in. I wish we had more time, but I just want to round up from everyone else. We know that we have a youth unemployment crisis in the country, an unemployment crisis in the country that affects everyone basically, because when you have someone around you who's not working and you are working, you are still affected. So, and young people in this country make up half of the working age population. What is it that young people can do, I think, Doc, you've touched on it, that like, Fees Must Fall was one of those tools that could have been like, enhanced and been used well to sort of build critical mass around young people's challenges so that they can overcome the trajectory. So I think my question in closing is, what do you guys individually think that, what is it that young people can do to change the past, the present, and the future trajectory of this country and their trajectory, basically?
Can
Are
I
you
maybe
asking
jump
us?
in?
Yes.
You know what, now?
I
think you shouldn't ask us. I think you should ask the audience. But they must write.
Yes, it's a question I'm posing to everyone.
Yeah. But I guess
but we can learn from the elders, right? They say that if when wisdom speaks, the youth listens sometimes. So we'll listen.
Mary, you want to go first? I guess, you see, these episodes or things that appear to be episodes are actually continuums of revolution. 1976 was preceded by 1960. And then was followed 40 years by Fees Must Fall. We are yet to see another rupture, which might come with a much more bigger momentum if we do not address the ability to create consciousness in the society. And when people are not, when they don't have that level of consciousness, they become animals. And that's what we are growing in South Africa, where we are insensitive to people being killed in Marikana. We are insensitive of Komape falling in a pit latrine. We are insensitive to Tolobeni where children died. We are insensitive to children being run over a truck in the hunt for coal. We are insensitive to Stilfontein where 100 bodies come out of the mines. And we say, smoke them out. Now, what kind of society are we? And others say, no, those are illegal people and so on. But are the people who drank contaminated water in Hammanskraal foreign nationals? Our system is just so callous and insensitive, far away from the Constitution. And that's where the threat of education must first start by making us conscious. Conscience is a critical skill that we must focus on. And in South Africa, I think we have lost our consciousness. Well, thanks. That has to be built and rebuilt.
Thank you, Doc. Tsidi, you can come in and then we'll wrap up with Larry.
Okay, I will keep mine also very short because I would love to hear from also from the people who are watching, who are tuning in as young people. I think one of the most disappointing aspects being young, even though I understand the position that I'm in, maybe I feel more empowered, but I really would like people in, my generation to really fight for our future. Like what Dr. Pali was saying, like we can do the nation building. We're the average age in South Africa is 28, if I'm not mistaken. And we're a young population and young people are the future. And, yes, we might disagree with what's happening now, but if we don't get involved today, what it means is that we will settle for a future that is shaped by people who are not going to be there to realize it. So I really would like for young people to have that future-focused mentality, that nation-building mentality, that's saying we need to restoration. Let this be the year of restoration and let's rebuild. And one of the ways to do it, I think, is to also look at some of the hard-won victories. So, for instance, public participation, being able to engage with parliamentarians, you know, that's not something, I mean, some countries don't really have that. And I think a lot of young people, a lot of people in this country don't know the opportunities that there are in that. But we can come together as young people and like just explore alternatives and start shaping those things and make submissions and bring them forward to parliament, and they have to listen to them. You know, we can push that, you know. I mean, I've seen it also, I mean, that's the one aspect of it. The other aspect is also to just like really take heed of the national budget. Like I said, with Fees Must Fall, like how I ended up here as a budget analyst today is because we just thought as young people, we came together and said, hey, these people are saying we can't afford free higher education, but let's show them that we can. Let's at least show them we have a plan. And in that, you know, obviously not taking credit and saying, you know, there's a lot that still needs to be done. But from those efforts, I think the graph that either Prof or Dr. Pali showed of it was the Michael Sachs graph of how much NSFAS funding just shot up because of the political will. So it just shows that, you know, as young people, like, yes, we might not have all the tools, or we might not think that we're at the best place, or we might not have all the answers, but we should at least try. Let's come together. Let's be collaborative instead of, you know, competitive or trying to be the first one or the youngest person in the room. But let's come together and say, like, we are trying to build a nation. We're trying to secure our futures. Let's come together and let's show them that we're actually thinking about these things. So yeah, just to wrap up and say, like, let's have that future focus mentality and work together so that we can really secure our future and create a country that actually, like, that people in this country deserve to live in. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
All right, Mary. Also in the chat, there is a survey that would like you guys to fill out for us. So if you could just take a few moments before you leave the call to fill out the survey. Maybe you can go.
Yeah, so that was a fabulous question, and I loved listening to the two responses. I'm also very conscious that globally we're sitting with a deepening crisis around economy, participation, young people. So listening to Padi in terms of 1960, 1976, Fees Must Fall, 1983, 4-5, and where are we going? I would say that that's why the work of Youth Capital and many other organizations, Section 27, all of that, is so important, because where there's rage, it can be a powerful driver of significant political change. But what it requires is leadership that's principled, that has a sense of a future towards which people can be inspired with a clear program of action. So thank you for that seminar, for that reason. And I wrote something in the chat in response to where is it? Oh, Kenzie's point is that at the moment, I think, and I speak humbly because it's not my experience, young people feeling a sense of hopelessness and despair, alienation, marginalization from activities, young men feeling a sense of shame that they cannot, you know, provide, all of that. And I think that's what's critically important for leadership to inspire young people with, is a sense of making a social contribution, even if it's not through employment, because that gives a sense of purpose, it gives a sense of value, and your whole being and identity isn't reduced to the material that you're employed, unemployed, driving a car, not driving a car. We've got to build a social and political movement on that kind of valuing of a social contribution and social participation. But that's easy for me to say. That's why I say so humbly. Thank you, Nape.
All right. So before we close off, thank you all so much for staying with us on the call. I know we went over by 10 minutes, but the conversation was that interesting and our guests had quite a lot to share. So the survey that we have in the chat box. It's basically a survey on the campaign that we're running around NSFAS. We are trying to get people's experiences of using NSFAS so that those insights can really shape our advocacy as we go forward to try to push NSFAS to get its house in check, as I say. So those who've used NSFAS or are using NSFAS or have tried to apply for NSFAS, please fill out that survey. It's not a post-webinar survey, it's just around that. But thank you all so much. I'm sorry to those that I couldn't read their comments, but there was a fiery discussion in the chat, and I'm happy that Mary, you were also participating in that. And also, Doc, thank you for sharing your presentations. So thank you, everyone. We hope to have more of these conversations around some of our campaigns, around the 3 advocacy goals that we have at Youth Capital, which revolve around public employment programs, skills, and also around, the formality to the informality to formality, being self-employed, and also just young people trying to earn money outside of the job market. So yeah, thank you so much, and we hope to see everyone again. To those that have used NSFAS or are using NSFAS or are applying for NSFAS, please fill out the survey, and we hope to see you all next time.
I've shared my presentation.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Just, yeah.
All right.
So
But otherwise,
Nape, I just to say, I've managed to download it, but don't close the webinar.
Okay, no, I'm not going to close it.
Yeah, until people have downloaded it if they want it. Yeah.
And Mary, did you share the document that you wanted to share?
Yeah, so I must just let me just quickly see if I can find it online. I'm sure I can, so just give me, yeah.
If I raised my hand, I didn't think I was going to. Otherwise, no, I am off. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Doc. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thanks for the
All right,
opportunity.
thank you, Siri.
Bye.
Bye.